When I worked at MasterCard, we were doing financial inclusion as our sort of focus areas. So Nigeria being a specific market, they said, Davis, we need you to go identify greatest barriers, go find the community partners and organizations you're going to work with, etc. So, on the 13-hour flight over to Nigeria, I was scribbling down a bunch of ideas, and I sort of had a game plan of who I'm going to meet with and what I'm going to do. I get there, meet with this one partner. It is a organization that works with farmers to help them get their products to market. So we're talking to tomato farmers and the team that was running it. I said, why am I here? I couldn't put one and one together. What do these farmers need? Do they need bank accounts? Do they need credit card terminals? I don't understand. What is it that they need? And they said, they don't need any of that. What they need are plastic crates. And I said, I'm not sure I understand. Is that a euphemism for something? They said, no, we need plastic crates to transport our tomatoes from the field to the market.
So that's the voice of Davis. This is from the time he was working with MasterCard, and he's talking about how MasterCard basically spent $250,000 on plastic crates in Nigeria. But, I think the ultimate question is, why did the Nigerian farmers need plastic crates more than anything else? So let's get back to the story.
Because when we put them in these raffia baskets, they get squished. And when the tomatoes come to the market that are squished, no one wants to buy them. So we lose a lot of our money. If we have some plastic crates, it really would help us. And I was like, this is the big idea. This is the big plan. They were like, yep. On the flight home, I said, how am I going to pitch this to my boss that I need $250,000 to buy a bunch of plastic crates? And I came and I told her, and she was like, are you sure about this? And I said, yeah, I'm pretty certain that this will actually really help. And she said, Davis, if this doesn't work, you're going to be out of a job. So you got to make sure this works. And within 3 months, we started to see tremendous impact for these farmers, that they were able to sell more product and therefore gain more income. It was such a simple fix, very low tech plastic crates, but at the same time, high yield, high impact, right? Like these tomato farmers really would come to me and were like, the markets are demanding our tomatoes because they're of good quality. And because of this extra revenue, I'm able to put my kids through school. I'm able to buy medicine. I'm able to, get electricity in my house, etc. And I was sort of amazed by it. And from there, okay, well, what if we now help you digitize your payments so that you're not walking around with these wads of cash? So now here comes MasterCard with its technology, with its infrastructure. On top of a low-tech solution, here comes this high-tech solution, and it's been a win-win, right?
That was a really interesting story. And the very fact that technology isn't what people generally need, right? There's an element of trust you need to build with the people that you want to help out.
Yeah, I totally agree, because when it comes to CSR, corporate social responsibility, it's the main aim of the company, not only to do good and make it social impact, but also it helps people believe, or rather it helps people trust in the brand or the company. I think it's really important that trust is a part of it. And I truly believe that technology also plays a part in building that trust.
Hey everyone, and welcome to Tech for Impact, the show where we talk about technology and how it can impact your lives daily. My name is Ben.
And I'm Darren Lee. On today's show, we will be talking about just that, CSR, corporate social responsibility. Ben, when I talk about CSR, what comes to your mind when you hear this?
Yeah, so I have a couple of expressions of what CSR is because my background has a bit of social work in it. But fundamentally, the biggest problem that I see is you want them to figure out the problem themselves so that they can help themselves. I think believing in the people who are on ground to solve their own problems is the huge thing. So for me, when CSR is brought into the equation, a lot of times it's just somebody trying to throw money at you. And, it's not really from the perspective of, can I really help you?
Yeah, totally true. That's why I think on today's show, we're going to be talking a lot about CSR from a corporate perspective. And that's why we've got Davis John Abraham here.
Yeah. So Davis currently works for Cognizant, and Cognizant is this huge multinational company. He heads global social impact as a division and global philanthropy in Cognizant. But before that, he also worked with MasterCard, and that's the story that we heard. He's also worked with JP Morgan and a couple of other organizations as well. So he can really give us that corporate perspective of what CSR is almost. And I think he can be very blunt about it as well.
Cool. Let's just jump right back into the conversation.
For the past almost nearly 30 years now, Cognizant has always operated in this space, helping clients optimize and digitize their operations, everything to anything. You name an industry, you name a client, you name a vendor, we're probably working in that industry with that client. Because we work in every sector, right? And with our client partners, these leading companies, we have an interesting insight into what are their needs and specifically what are they hiring for. A few years ago, Cognizant decided to set up a foundation, really focus on STEM education and really digital skills training. And then last year, we officially launched a brand new initiative, which we're really excited about. It's called the Synapse Initiative, which is in 3 years. So by December 2026, our goal is to skill and train 1 million individuals for what we call the jobs of the future. So making sure not only do they have digital skills and training, because we do feel that no matter what industry you're in, you're going to need a digital skill of some sort, but that skilling and training program really leads to increasing your employability or directly employment.
I love this idea that Cognizant wants to train like 1 million people, either employing them or making them employable, right? It's huge. But why? Why does an organization like Cognizant want to do it? And I think that's more critical here in my books, because I'm looking at it from the NGO's perspective more than the corporate perspective, right? I always think, hey, what's your ulterior motive? I don't know. Like, you tend to find that more often than not, people don't do stuff without any.
All right. Not the skeptical here, but
Yeah, I'm the skeptic. I'm sorry.
no, I get it. But okay, truth be told, from a corporate perspective, everyone always looks for an ROI in some way, the return. But that doesn't mean it has to be for profit, but it could be for growth. It could be for betterment. It could be for a lot of things that sometimes a lot of times we miss that point. So I think Davis does actually explain quite a lot here about what it's like from the corporate perspective on what's the return on investment when it comes to impact work.
Because we work in every sector, right? Whether it be finance, pharmaceuticals, life sciences, hospitality, food industry, you name it, regardless of the industry, regardless of the job title, every single one of those jobs required some level of digital skills training. And the one thing we kept hearing over and over again is the lack of talent, that there just wasn't enough talent that had the skill sets that employers were looking for. So as we looked at that, we also looked at our pipeline of future talent, that we want to make sure that we are able to hire individuals in the next 5 to 10 years that have the skills that we are looking for. As we were sort of trying to address this problem, we said, why don't we focus all of our social impact initiatives on digital skilling and training and make sure that we are building a robust pipeline of skilled talent that will be able to not only help our clients, our vendors, but also ourselves. And now the question I often get is, well, Davis, did AI sort of disrupt your whole plan? Because now you don't need thousands of software developers. You'll have AI sort of take care of that. Yeah, to some extent, AI will definitely disrupt any industry and will continue to disrupt. But we still believe that we're still going to need individuals to leverage that AI for new ideas, new products, new solutions, right? AI might be able to help us with some of the operational efficiencies, but at the end of the day, it's not going to develop the new products that will need to come to market. That will still be driven by people, and those individuals across the board will need digital skills at some level.
Now, Davis, when this initiative is pushed through, will it be targeting any specific groups like impoverished groups, inner city kids, so on and so forth? Or is it a general upskilling of an entire generation?
So it's really focused on reskilling and upskilling of individuals across the board. So part of that million includes some of our own employees, in addition to what we call the broader community cohort, but also our technology partners. It is open to everyone and anyone. We have asked our grantee partners to make a special focus on marginalized communities, communities that normally would not have access or representation, women, especially who are not in the tech sector or represented as much in the tech sector. For example, one of our grantees in Germany is working with the migrant community, right? Refugees and migrant community. They have now come to Germany. They're trying to integrate into society. They are not able to get high paying quality jobs because they don't necessarily have the skill set or they have a language barrier. We're supporting an organization who's helping to do some digital skilling and training there so that those individuals can get into those high paying jobs and be able to have a better integration into society. So the program is open to all, but obviously there is sort of that focus of making sure there's equity across the board for people to have access.
Hey guys, this episode was brought to you by Freedom World app. It is a gamified social platform where you can join communities around a variety of interests, popular brands, events, and much more. You can immerse yourself in the community that's filled with activities and connect with like-minded individuals who share your passion. It's also the perfect platform for small businesses, content creators, or anyone looking to create a community. You'll find a variety of tools and features ranging from news feeds and your own online store to creating branded tokens and AI-generated content that will help you engage, monetize, and grow your community. Download Freedom World on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and create your world today.
I want to take like 2 steps backwards. A lot of times I think people assume that as large corporations or as large organizations, doing something different is a very difficult, tedious, red-taped process almost. Startups pivot like almost on a daily basis, but the opposite is what everybody assumes about the corporate world, right? Because you're so set in the way something is done, or at least that's the assumption. How does the idea kind of blossom within the organization?
As a technology company, obviously, we've always had a focus on digital skilling and training, but it wasn't necessarily our only core focus, right? So we were like many companies, be good corporate citizens, invest in the communities where we work and live, and just do right by our clients, our vendors, our customers, and our employees. In 2023, we had a change in leadership. So we had a brand new CEO come in, Ravi Kumar, who's been absolutely terrific to work with. And from literally day one, he came with the intention of, we need to be different. We need to do something different and disruptive to be able to be relevant in this industry. And honestly, it was Ravi who said, let's think about the goal of 1 million. Skilling and training 1 million individuals in the next 3 years. And we all sort of took a gasp and we're like, how about 5? How about 5? It sounds like a better number. He was like, no, this needs to be sooner. We need to be able to assess impact. It needs to be a big and bold initiative. So with that, we came up with an idea of skilling and training 1 million individuals. We started pulling in the right individuals from within our company of, okay, our learning and development team is going to be involved. HR is involved. Obviously finance, social impact, like all these various groups that were brought in to say, okay, how do we build out a program where we can leverage the skill sets of all these individuals and ensure that we have the buy-in and commitment to make this happen, because this is a audacious goal that Ravi has.
So big companies definitely are going to invest in something that they think is great for them.
We talked about AI earlier, and I said, yeah, everyone should spend every waking moment studying AI. I totally still believe that. But I think what Davis mentioned here is the fact of what is the ROI, what is the big return. And he did say that people have always been their biggest asset, right? And he does go on to explain that AI is a tool, but humans are the ones using the tool. And also it is going to be the tool that helps or benefits the human itself. It's good to see how big organizations like that are. They understand this. That's why they are investing in people.
A couple of years ago, back in my advertising days, I remember like without a content writer, you really didn't get anywhere, right? And today everyone's like, oh, you can use AI and it'll generate content. Yeah, it does generate content. But if you don't tell it what type of content to generate, you're still in the dark,
Sure.
right? The whole idea that, oh, AI is going to replace humans is not really there. It's like akin to saying, oh, farm equipment now is automated, therefore you don't need farmers anymore. But you do. And I think that mindset change is very, very
Yeah.
important.
Usually we're always thinking like, big corporates focus should be on their business, right? Shouldn't it be about making money,
Totally. But I like the fact that Cognizant is actually saying, hey, we value our human resource. Humans are, at the end of the day, the guys who are going to make the difference, drive the strategy, come up with the strategy, etc. So that's really, really interesting for me that they're focusing on training that.
Yeah, let's jump back into the conversation.
As I talk to partners, I always ask the question, what can we do to help you scale and grow to where you need to be, right? What is the problem that you're facing so we can really be there? I think industry as a whole in the CSR community is moving away from this funder model to what I call the investor model, where it's not simply about your organization, here's a check, best of luck, call me in 12 months and tell me how it went. That was what I would consider the old school model. The new school model is more so, we are going to invest in you, we are going to work with you, we're going to partner with you, and we are going to leverage our broader network and all of our assets to help you achieve the goals that you need.
That is actually truly amazing, because it really hit me on the head with how all of it is basically part of technology.
I want to go back to that one point you were making, that the mindset is kind of changing. 20, 25 years ago, when you hit the field, how was it as opposed to what it is today?
The first year and a half of me starting out, it was very much, let's be good corporate citizens, right? Let's show up at events, cut ribbons, present big checks, take photos, write press releases, and really show that we are a company that is committed to our communities. And honestly, a lot of companies are still doing that, which is perfectly fine. We need to do that. That needs to happen, right? Big tech companies need to support the local soup kitchen, even though there's not a one-to-one correlation. You need to support the animal shelter and the hospital, and all those things need to happen. But back then it was very much, okay, let's go ahead and make these investments because it positions us well in the community. So there was very much more so good PR, good branding, just being a good corporate citizen. Over time, I saw that pivot primarily because 9/11 hit, funds dried up, and the very little funds that companies did have, because they slashed budgets and slashed staffing, they said, okay, well, we no longer could do what we were doing before. We have to make sure with this limited amount of funds, how do we get the biggest bang for it? So it may not be that we can go ahead and just sprinkle a little bit everywhere. Rather, let's focus our approach and our attention on addressing one critical issue, whether that be hunger, whether it be healthcare, whether it be financial literacy, whatever it may be. And slowly I saw companies starting to make that turn. And when I joined MasterCard in 2013, and even at JP Morgan and at Cognizant, it became very relevant that these organizations understood that the investments we make in these communities come back to benefit us in the long run of making sure that we're solving for a localized problem. These are the people who use their products. These are the people who are, selling their products in the stores, and they are also the consumers. So they realize very quickly it benefits us to be able to support these communities to address these problems as a whole. I remember at MasterCard, my former coworker saying this phrase of moving from the funder to the investor. That's who we are as a company. And I've always sort of held on to that of, we are invested in you. And because of that, we are going to walk this journey with you. We are going to ask some pointed questions because we want to see good results, but we also want to help you along the way.
The other mentalities that a lot of organizations take is, oh, wait a minute, we've got technology, we will substitute technology and not hire the person, right? Because if I buy a $20 chat GPT, I get my content written, as opposed to hiring someone for X amount, which is a lot more than $20, right? A month. that mindset in itself, I don't know, is that also something that you're seeing across the market? Because I know startups have that problem, and I know a lot of nonprofits run like startups by virtue of not being able to raise enough funds and, always living hand to mouth almost. Is this something that you see across the board as well?
There are a slew of problems and issues that these organizations face, and human capital at the end of the day is your greatest asset, right? You can have all the money in the world, but if you don't have humans to be able to actually develop strategy, execute on strategy, assess impact, and be able to engage with your stakeholders, you know, I don't think AI is going to ever be able to counter that, right? Can it do some of it? Sure. Can it make you help you be more efficient and effective? Absolutely. But it's not going to take away the human element, which is going to be necessary to drive engagement with your stakeholders. Ajay Bunga, who was the CEO of MasterCard, who I worked with when I was there, one thing that he said that always stuck with me was, we as a company have to learn to do well by doing good. And we were all like, applauding and cheering, and we're like, all right, great, our jobs are secure. But he said, listen, none of us would be able to do any of those good things unless the company does well. So it's important that we do well so that we can do good. So both have to work hand in hand. It was important to understand that very early on, to say, okay, in what we do, we can really do some great things and make some great societal impacts. But at the same time, at the end of the day, this is a business. We have to understand how we operate as a business, how we function, how does a company earn its income, and make sure at the end of the day, they are able to do that. But at the same time, when there are opportunities to be able to do these great things, really move the needle, right? Like really be able to say, by us funding this program, X individuals have been able to be benefited, and then they've been able to do Y because of it, right? Really show a one-to-one correlation. But yeah, a lot of these companies that are doing philanthropy, I don't think it's necessarily just altruistic. I think it's because they understand how it impacts their bottom line.
It's about the money at the end of the day.
It is. It's not a bad thing. It's just making sure that they understand, how do we leverage that money to be able to have that impact. But we won't be able to have any impact if we don't have the money.
I totally agree on that, because I think that it gives a vision, or at least a direction of how you can motivate a company towards being profitable in order to give back.
Absolutely. And I think the shift in generational employees, boomers are retiring, you have, millennials and zennials and all the various categories. One of the things they'll tell you is, these individuals, as they are looking for jobs, they will say, we want to make sure we are invested in a company that is going to have a greater impact, right? And it's not simply about just earning an income. What is your social impact? And to a point where HR and recruiters have come to us and say, can you give us some data, some information, so that when they do ask us this question, we are able to answer it appropriately, because there's a generational shift of this being also a priority for them.
I guess it's the generational shift, as you mentioned, which also leads me to the next question, which would be how technology offers transparency as well. There's this slight, I guess I would call it skepticism, with people having the perception of big corporations when it comes to CSR projects. How do you see technology helping to reduce that skepticism, or at least giving them access to transparency?
Transparency is going to be the key factor in all of this, right? So any good investor relations team within a company will say, okay, if we're going to publish this, we need to see proof of the 1,000 individuals that you impacted, right? We need data for audit purposes to say that this has happened, right? And technology is helping that transparency to be readily available in any of the reporting. I'm not going to be able to meet with every single one of my grantees in person, see every single program. It's just cost prohibitive, right? But technology can give me access to the data sets and say, okay, I know that these individuals actually went through the program. Not only did they go through the program, but I could see outcomes and outputs, and say, not only do they graduate, but they actually got a job. It's helping them increase income, right? You can see all the various data points along the way. So at that point, it actually gets to the ability of corporations to be able to say, our level of impact is true, it's verified, and you have access to it, right? You can see what we are doing, how we are doing it, and when we are doing it.
So, okay, we dealt with a little bit of skepticism from the perspective of someone who might be on the receiving end and also people from the outside looking in. But I think it was a wonderful insight that Davis gave us on how corporate CSR isn't necessarily just investing in like a society or in technology, but at the end of the day, the betterment of humankind, whether a corporate invests their time to clean up a beach or to upskill 1 million people. I think it's a really good insight into how corporates are choosing what to invest in when it comes to impact work.
I think there have been a lot of examples as well. Like you've got your Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, or right now called the Gates Foundation. Bill Gates made his money through Microsoft. Now he's trying to figure out a way to make sure that the money can be spent in such a way that it benefits people, right? And then there's Warren Buffett.
Only like the greatest investor ever.
Yes. So right. He's basically committed his entire, personal funds to donate it back for a cause. And you're finding more and more people who've made money to like give back to society for the betterment of the world as a whole. I guess at the end of the day, you can make all the money you want, but then what, right? Like, what more is there? There's a limit, right, to luxury. That we don't live in a very needy world as we did, let's say, 100 years ago.
And, it goes back to what Davis mentioned. He did say, we need to do well so that we can do good. And that really explains a lot in how corporates these days should be looking at how to invest in impact work. So the better you are at improving yourself, the better and more you can contribute to society as a whole.
Very true. Very true. Well, thanks a ton, Davis, for taking your time to come and talk to us here on Tech for Impact. We'll be here with another amazing and incredible story next week.
You've been listening to Tech for Impact, brought to you by Freedom World, a cutting-edge technology platform dedicated to building and growing active communities on the blockchain. This episode was hosted by me, Darren, and my co-host.
That's me, Ben.
This episode was produced by Arun Joseph from The Surge.online, edited by Andrew Martin. Sound design and mixing was done by Peter James, and incredible music is by Kushi. Thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to share it with your friends, subscribe to the podcast, and leave us a review. Until next time, stay curious and keep making an impact.